one that the Special Forces are going to use, and I think we have to be very careful. This, for the Marine Corps, this is one of their essential programs that they have strongly supported for many, many years, and it would be a devastating blow to them not to finish this procurement.
Jimmy Yields back.
Mr. Chairman, I claim the time in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman is recognized to strike the requisite number of words.
Some of our members have made some very eloquent statements why this is not a good amendment. So I'm going to be very brief and just say very simply, this amendment could possibly have a serious adverse effect on the soldiers and the Marines who are operating in and around the mountains of Afghanistan, who need what the V-22 can provide them. If it's not available, if it's not there, they could be in serious trouble. So this is not a good amendment, and I don't think that we should support it in any way. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from Illinois, rise.
Mr. Speaker, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the amendment introduced by my colleague from Illinois, Mr. Gutierrez. If we are truly serious about reducing our long-term deficits, we must look at the whole picture, a picture that includes defense. There can be no sacred cows or pork. Today, defense spending, including security-related programs, comprise almost 20% of federal spending, yet it is the only part of this budget that is exempt from the tough cuts facing all other departments. The Osprey is one of the most egregious examples of waste in the defense budget, yet DoD continues to request this costly, ineffective machine. And with due respect, the only threat this amendment poses is if it doesn't pass, it could kill our own troops. Even worse, Congress continues to fund it. The Osprey was originally created to allow Marines to carry troops and cargo faster, higher, and farther than a traditional helicopter. Now the Osprey is 186% over budget, costs $100 million per unit to produce, and is not suited to fly safely in extreme heat, excessive sand, or under fire. And sadly, this aircraft has killed 30 Marines in accidents. The Government Accountability Office recommended DoD reconsider procurement of the Osprey, and experts argue a helicopter could achieve many of the objectives of the Osprey at a much lower cost. Let's show our constituents that we are serious about cutting the deficit by looking at all parts of the budget. Waste is waste, bloat is bloat. The fact that it comes under the Department of Defense doesn't change anything. I urge adoption of this amendment because eliminating funding for procurement of a costly, inefficient, and over-budget V-22 Osprey will prove to our constituents that we are serious about reduced spending. It will help realign our military strategy to meet today's needs, and it will save the taxpayers $415 million this year alone. Thank you, and I yield back.
Jimmy yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from Virginia, rise.
I rise to strike the requisite number of words.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can understand why our colleagues from Illinois have offered this amendment. It is an expensive system, and in fact, assertions recently surfaced about the inability of the Osprey to operate in hot conditions, high altitudes, or from U.S. Navy ships. But the fact is that these charges have been disproven repeatedly in daily operations. The fact is that the Osprey provides unparalleled flexibility for Marines and Air Force Special Forces in combat operations. They have had 14 fully successful deployments to date. No aircraft in the U.S. inventory has been subjected to as extensive a series of live fire testing as the V-22. It is the most survivable rotorcraft ever built for the Marine Corps and Air Force. When the enemy has been able to hit the V-22, the aircraft has absorbed the damage and returned to base without injuries to passengers or crew on every single occasion. Many of the initial readiness challenges stem from deploying the aircraft into combat before a supply chain and depot maintenance infrastructure was adequately in place. So it cost more. The reason it cost more was that the Special Forces felt they They needed to bring it into combat operation immediately because it was such a successful rotorcraft. They needed it for the safety and effectiveness of our troops. That's why the cost is greater than it otherwise would have been if they had had the infrastructure in place. The fact is that major studies from both government and industry have shown that the V-22 is more operationally effective and cost-efficient than any helicopter alternative. It requires fewer aircraft, fewer personnel, and support than conventional rotorcraft. That results in a reduced footprint, and what we all need to be concerned about, particularly in this context, is lower total life cycle costs. So for that reason, I think that we ought to reject this amendment and enable the Defense Department to choose its own priorities for cost cutting, and certainly it is in the process of doing that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back.
Ask for a record vote. Ask for a vote.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Gutierrez. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The noes have it.
Your vote.
Gentleman from Illinois requests a recorded vote pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Illinois will be postponed. The clerk will continue to read.
Page 23, line 14, Weapons Procurement, Navy. $3,221,957,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2013. Procurement of ammunition, Navy and Marine Corps. $790,527,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2013. Shipbuilding and conversion, Navy. For outfitting, conversion, and first destination transportation, $295,570,000. In all, $15,366,658,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2015. Other procurement, Navy, including transfer of funds, $5,804,963,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2013. Procurement, Marine Corps, $1,236,436,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2013. Aircraft procurement, Air Force, $13,483,739,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2013. Missile procurement, Air Force, $5,424,764,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2013. Procurement and ammunition, Air Force, $731,487,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2013. Other procurement, Air Force, including transfer of funds, $17,568,091,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2013. Procurement, defense-wide, including transfer of funds, $4,009,321,000 to remain available for obligation until September 30th, 2013. Defense Production Act purchases, $34,346,000.
Mr. Chairman.
For what purpose, gentleman from Kansas rise?
I rise to make an amendment. It's amendment number 86.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 86, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Pompeo of Kansas.
Gentleman from Kansas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I rise to amend the Defense Appropriations Bill by cutting $115 million of additional funding. This $115 million is aimed at alternative energy inside the Defense Department appropriations budget. Now, I will assure you that with the President having advocated for, in his budget, billions of dollars of alternative energy research, development, and other types of research, that we don't need $115 million of that in our Department of Defense budget. This funding is wasteful, it's duplicative, and won't help our soldiers. It's in 5 different parts of the appropriations legislation in small amounts, and this is new money. It's above and beyond that which the President had requested. We are not underfunding alternative energy research. Just this week, the RAND Corporation came out with a study talking about alternative energy research in the defense budget, and they concluded it was not helping our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen, and our fighters. So I would urge support of this amendment, reducing by $115 million the deficit that our nation faces. With that, I yield back my time.
Chairman yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from New Jersey, rise?
I rise to claim time in opposition and to strike the requisite number of words.
Gentleman recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise in opposition to the amendment. The Defense Subcommittee has spent much time over the past 2 years looking into the effects of the services, all the services, to reduce their dependence on fossil fuel. The Department of Defense, which consumes 93% of all the fuel consumed by the U.S. government, has made significant strides in reducing its consumption. But the associated logistics of moving fuel for vehicles, aircraft, forward operating bases remain massive and costly. It has also been shown that for every 24 fuel convoys in Afghanistan, an American soldier is wounded or killed. The Defense Subcommittee has made a conscious and dedicated effort to advance the Department's efforts, searching for better ways to reduce consumption and alleviate the costly and complicated logistics. This amendment, however, would unnecessarily erase that progress and further the Department's dependence on fossil fuels. For this and many other reasons, I urge no on this amendment.
Yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from Washington, rise?
I move to strike the requisite number of words and to rise in strong opposition to the amendment. The amendment cuts $115.5 million in funding for development of alternative energy. The bill includes funding based in part on the Defense Science Board's February 2008 report on DoD energy strategy. The DSB Board made numerous recommendations to improve DoD energy efficiency. In addition, the committee held a formal briefing with officials from the military services, the Defense Logistic Agency, and OSD to review energy efficiency and energy technology programs. DoD is the largest single consumer of energy in the United States. In 2006, it spent $13.6 billion to buy 110 million barrels of petroleum fuel, about 300,000 barrels of oil each day, and 3.8 billion kilowatt hours of electricity. This represents about 0.8% of total U.S. energy consumption and 78% of energy consumption by the federal government. In combat operations such as Iraq and Afghanistan, moving fuel to deployed forces has proven to be a high-risk operation. Reducing operational fuel demand is the single best means to reduce that risk. However, the Defense Science Board concluded that DoD is not currently equipped to make decisions on the most effective way to do so. The DSB recommended increased investment in energy-efficient and alternative energy technologies to a level commensurate with their operational and financial value. The Defense Science Board recommended that the Department of Defense invest in basic research to develop new fuel technologies. There are too risky for private investments, and to partner with private sector fuel users to leverage efforts and share burdens. The bill emphasizes funding these types of initiatives. I strongly urge rejection of this amendment and yield back my time.
For what purpose, gentleman from Massachusetts, rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment, and I ask to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I don't come here to argue that we don't have to make serious cuts and reduce our spending. I'm sure that we do and we will. But I do find it remarkable that I stood in this place a matter of weeks ago and fought to have a small increase in taxes for millionaires that would have eased the burden that we face today. But the argument was made, and made loudly from my colleagues across the aisle, that we couldn't afford to cut we couldn't afford to make millionaires pay more taxes. We were talking about increasing the tax rate on amounts over $250,000 from 36% to 39%. And we were told that we could not do that. Yet here we are today, and we're talking about cutting low-income heating assistance for families in the Northeast, in New England, that are suffering from the worst winter in decades. We're talking about cutting WIC for single moms that are trying to raise kids. We're talking about cutting education and funds for kids. It seems that our priorities are misplaced here. Save the tax cuts for the millionaires, but cut everything for people who have nowhere else to turn. It's reverse Robin Hood. We're robbing from the poor to make sure the rich keep their tax cuts. I can't believe it. You know, in that bill, not many weeks ago, just a few weeks ago, we actually, I didn't, but those who voted for it did, they cut $119 billion out of Social Security. But by God, we kept those tax cuts for those millionaires. You know, with all due respect to my colleagues on the other aisle from the Tea Party, I actually represent the city of Boston, the Port of Boston. When you visit the Tea Party Memorial, that's in my district. And I just for the record, I want to make sure people understand, when the colonists at the Tea Party revolted, they threw the tea overboard. They didn't throw senior citizens overboard. They didn't throw kids overboard. They didn't throw young mothers on WIC overboard. And we have a challenge before us about where our priorities are going to be going forward. I'm proud to say that I grew up in the housing projects in South Boston. I'm not ashamed to say that we struggled as a family when I was a kid. I'm too old to be a WIC baby, but if they had had it, I'm sure my family would have been on it. As my dad used to say, there were times in our family where we had to save up to be poor. But we have a moral obligation here to get our priorities right. And I hope that at some point in this process that ideology is set aside and that we really do tackle the problems this country faces in a fair way. I've been here long enough that I understand that fairness does not always carry the day in these debates. But when you see the cuts to people who have nowhere else to turn, when you see cuts to Social Security, $119 billion cut out of Social Security several weeks ago, we diverted that out. And I'm sure at some point we're going to hear that it's unsustainable. Social Security is unsustainable because we cut $119 billion out of it. But we got seniors in this country that have nowhere else to turn. They're on fixed income. And we cut Social Security rather than ask millionaires to give a little bit more. And I think that is not consistent with what this country is all about. I hope that at some point that common sense and mutual interest on behalf of what's really important to this country does prevail in this chamber, and that ideology, both far right and far left, is tossed aside and we can actually get down to the business of moving this country forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Chairman yields back. For what purpose, gentleman from Oregon, rise?
Strike the requisite words.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I rise in opposition to the amendment. I strongly support the comments from the gentleman from New Jersey, the gentleman from the state of Washington. In fact, they understated the case. The United States Department of Defense is the largest consumer of energy in the world. These, I think, ill-advised efforts to undercut important research areas have significant implications, first and foremost, for the operational activities of the Department of Defense. The Iraq War was 4 times more energy intense than the first Gulf War. Given what's happened in terms of changing tactics, and frankly, the danger to our troops was understated. Those tankers might as well have great big bullseyes painted on them because they were targets for terrorists and put our soldiers at risk, and all of us represent states who lost people because of that vulnerability. It costs over $100 a gallon to deliver this fuel to the front. I seriously hope that people take a deep breath and listen to the counsel of the people from the committee. This is a long-term threat to our men and women in the field. It's also a long-term threat to the Department of Defense's budget. If you plot what their energy costs have been over time, it probably rivals only the cost of health care for our troops. I would hope that we understand the opportunities here. It is, as my friend from the state of Washington pointed out, research that isn't going to happen from the private sector. This is the sort of investment that government needs to make up front, the same thing that led to the development of the Internet. It will have important economic benefits going forward because this will not be exclusively the province of the Department of Defense. The extent to which these technologies work and can be brought to scale, they will be developed by private companies, and it will make a difference for how we as Americans live. Because after all, we as a country waste more energy than anybody in the world. This is a very serious point. I deeply appreciate the wise counsel of the committee leadership, and I strongly urge that this amendment be rejected. I yield back.
The question. For what purpose, gentleman from Maryland rise?
I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman recognized for 5 minutes.
Last week there was a WikiLeaks activity that pointed out a huge problem that we in the world face. WikiLeaks released some confidential emails that indicated that the Saudis had only 60% of the oil that they had advertised that they had. I think this is probably true of most of the OPEC countries that were incented to exaggerate their oil reserves when they were permitted to pump a percentage of the oil reserves. There's almost nobody now who doesn't agree that the world reached its maximum production of conventional oil in '06. We've been stuck now for about 5 years at 85 million barrels a day of oil, and increasingly the difference between conventional oils, which are now falling off in production, and that 85 million barrels a day is made up by unconventional oil like the heavy sour of Venezuela and the tar sands of Alberta, Canada. Our military has been very wisely pursuing a goal that the rest of us should have been involved in. Maybe they read Hyman Rickover's speech from 1957, where he noted that in the 8,000-year recorded history of man, the age of oil would be but a blip. He didn't know then how long it would last, but he said how long it lasted was important in only one regard. The longer it lasted, the more time would we have to plan an orderly transition to other sources of energy. Of course, we have done none of that, in spite of the fact that we have known for 31 years of an absolute certainty that we're going to get here today, because by 1980 we were already 10 years down the other side of Hubbard's Peak, as predicted by M. King Hubbard in 1956. The military has been attuned to this problem much more than any other part of our society, and they have been very wisely pursuing alternative fuels, because as we wind down on the available fossil fuels, the world will ultimately, of course, move to alternative fuels. And the military has several reasons for doing this. It's a very aggressive program, a very wise program, and I think that it would just be tragic if we were to eliminate the funds for this. They increasingly need to move to alternatives for all of the reasons that the rest of us need to be alternatives, and for additional reasons. They now are moving to alternatives that they can produce on site. to reduce the long supply trails that create so many casualties over there. No, they ought to have been doing this earlier. I'm delighted they're doing it now, and I think it would be a national security tragedy if we were to deny them the funds to continue doing this, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose, gentlelady from California rise?
Mr. Speaker, I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
And speak in support of the amendment before this one, Congressman Gutierrez's amendment to reduce funding for the V-22 Osprey. This program has been highly troubled since its inception. In fact, it was almost canceled several times, and as my friend Mr. Gutierrez noted, former Defense Secretary Cheney actually called for its cancellation several times. During its testing, the V-22 killed 30 people, and in April 2010, a V-22 crashed in Afghanistan, killing 4 more people. The GAO has noted that this plane has trouble flying over 8,000 feet or in extreme heat. And you know what? There's more. This plane has a problem carrying troops, transporting cargo, and operating off naval vessels. No wonder the Pentagon wants to cancel the program in its entirety. Mr. Speaker, canceling the V-22, at least reducing its funding, would not only save face for us, it would also... Yes, sir.
The Pentagon does not want to kill this program.
Well,
I just want to make sure that you understand that, because this is one of the highest priorities for the Marine Corps, the Air Force, and Special Operations. And most of the problems you're talking about have been taken care of.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But that is my understanding of what the Pentagon wanted to do with it. But I yield to your wisdom.
Thank you.
But I do believe that canceling the V-22 and saving $10 to $12 billion over 10 years would be real fiscal savings. Thank you, and I yield back.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Kansas. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. For what purpose, gentleman from Kansas, rise? Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Kansas will be postponed. So we're good to go? To Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments printed in the congressional record on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. Amendment number 370 by Mr. Flake of Arizona, Amendment number 87 by Mr. Pompano of Kansas, Amendment number 63 by Mr. Gutierrez of Illinois, and Amendment number 86 by Mr. Pompeo of Kansas. The chair will reduce to 2 minutes the time for any electronic voting after the first vote in this series. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on Amendment number 370 printed in the congressional record offered by the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Flake, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 370, printed in the congressional record offered by Mr. Flake.
The request will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
The House today began debate on the fiscal year 2011 spending bill. This is a debate that's going to last several days. They wrapped up an hour of general debate, but what we'll see, what we've seen so far, is debate on amendments to the defense portion of the bill. We have 5 amendment votes here, starting off with an amendment by Representative Flake of Arizona. We're going to open up our phone lines and ask what your thoughts are on where the federal budget can be cut. Keep in mind, this is for fiscal year 2011. For the remainder of the fiscal year, the current continuing resolution runs through early March, and this spending bill would carry the year through the end of fiscal year 2011, which is the end of September. Our phone numbers are for Republicans 202-585-3885. Democrats, it's 202-585-3886. For Independents, 202-585-3887. Make sure that you mute your television when you call in. And if you've gotten through and got on C-SPAN in the last 30 days, let others call in this evening with their thoughts on the federal budget for fiscal year 2011. Peter Kaspowicz writes the Floor Action blog for The Hill newspaper and joins us online. He's been following this debate in the U.S. House and will continue to follow it for the next couple of days. Peter Kaspowicz, give us a sense. You wrote a little bit earlier about the possibility that Democrats are trying to slow down the works. What in particular are you pointing out there? Peter Kaspowicz, you on the line with us? I'm going to put Peter, are you on the air? I'm going to put him on hold for a second and go to our first caller on for Bob in Kansas. Go ahead, Olasa, Kansas. Bob, you're on a Democrats line. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm just calling in regards to the defense bill. I'm a retired United States Marine, and I thought that when the Republicans went into office in the so-called Great Tea Party, they said that in their pledge to America that they would not touch the defense, at all. And here they are, arguing over defense. And my main point is that they need to leave the retired military, anybody in the military, especially us retirees and VA and veterans, leave our TRICARE alone and do not increase it, as what they're trying to do. That's what they're going to try to do here, probably in the 2012 budget. And they might even try to do it in this 2011 one. Who knows what they're going to do. But I'm just, I'm really upset that they pledged to America they wouldn't touch defense, and here they're doing it. So we're just back to more lies again. Representative Bachmann from Minnesota had already gotten herself in trouble a couple weeks ago when she spoke and said that she wanted to cut $4.5 billion from VA funding, in which President Obama had already given us $30 billion in VA funding. She quickly recanted that within 2 days because the VFW and the AMVETS put pressure on her, and that shows how strong that we can be, and I believe we can be a lot stronger than any old Tea Party out there if you get us veterans and retirees riled up.
Bob from Kansas, thanks for the input. And we are seeing a series, or will see a series, of amendment votes here. This first one by Jeff Flake of Arizona, which would reduce funding by about $18 million for unneeded boards and commissions. And debate will continue after these votes. Peter Kaspowicz writes the Floor Action blog for The Hill newspaper, joining us on the line. Peter Kaspowicz, earlier one of your reports said that Democrats are trying to slow the spending bill process here for fiscal year 2011. What are you seeing on the floor that's evidence of that?
Well, they did have what some Republicans are calling a mini filibuster. When the First Amendment came up, which is the one they're voting on right now, we had it started to trickle, and then it ended up being 24 Democrats showed up and took the full 5 minutes to argue not about the amendment so much, but about just the bill in general, how they didn't like it, how they don't think it creates jobs, and so. That went on, and no one knew how long that would last. It turns out it lasted about 2 hours or so. And then after that, they seemed to move back to what you might call regular order, people debating the actual amendments and things moving along more quickly. But it was clearly a show that, that they hate this bill. They've been saying it ever since it was introduced in sort of sketch form and then in legislative language. So they're making a point that they don't like it.
What sort of timeline have House Republican leaders laid out for finishing the debate on all these amendments and wrapping up this bill?
They still want to do it by this week. And after a day like this, it makes you wonder if it's possible. They still have the end of the week as a target date, but as we know, the House is not in on Friday, and it depends on how late they all want to work. As we saw today, they got through 4 amendments out of potentially 400. So they're not looking like they're on track for this week, but we also know that not every amendment will come up. So it seems like, depending on how many they sort of decide are repetitive or maybe not germane, that it may be possible if they're looking at maybe a few dozen, but it'll have to move quicker than it did today.
And just to be clear, they're not done for tonight, are they?
I'm not actually sure. I don't know if they're stopping here, but I just don't know. I don't know if they're going to do more than the 4 they've done tonight.
One of the pending amendments that's getting a lot of press is this cut proposed by the Republican Study Committee, Jim Jordan, Congressman Jordan, the additional $20 billion cut in the budget. When might we see that amendment come up?
It's because it's so fluid. No one's really sure, but people are guessing that it'll be toward the end of the process because it's an amendment that sort of cuts things across the board. It's looking to save maybe $20 billion more than what the Republicans have proposed, and so those sorts of amendments are coming up toward the end of the process. And so if they can stick to their schedule, it might be late tomorrow or Thursday at some point.
Before debate just started today, Speaker Boehner said that this was a historic moment in that the amount of amendments to be offered has never been done before. Can you recall a time, in particular on a spending bill, and this is for all intents and purposes a continuing resolution, anything of this size ever been done before on the floor?
No, Boehner said this has never been done, and what this is, as you said, it's a continuing resolution where they're going to allow people to just, they're working as a committee of the whole, and they're just allowing people to show up with amendments. And as we saw from what, again, sort of the mini filibuster, they're allowing as many people to speak as they want. Boehner did say, kind of jokingly, he said, I forget his exact words, but it was something like, I'm ready for whatever we might see here tonight, and then he sure did get a show for about 2 hours of Democrats opposing the entire bill.
Peter Kaspowitz covers Congress and writes for the Floor Action blog at thehill.com. Thank you for that update.
Sure.
During this first vote, this amendment by Jeff Flake of Arizona, we're taking your phone calls and your thoughts on federal spending for fiscal year 2011 and where you think cuts should be made or if they should be made. Let's go to Nevada next, and Carol's on our Democrats line. Thanks for waiting. Go ahead with your comments.
Yes, I'm retired and worked 27 years with a company that did defense contracts, and the waste in defense contracts is absolutely horrendous, and it's all Congress's fault because they authorize a contract like I worked on some missile contracts, but then they don't fund it. So that a contract that should have taken 4 years, 20 years later, it still is going on, and all the people like my company are basically receiving hundreds of millions of dollars to sit twiddling our thumbs. And it's totally ridiculous.
One of the amendments by Representative Gutierrez of Illinois would reduce the amount spent on aircraft for both the Air Force and the Navy as well. Let's go to Juneau, Alaska, and Dwight's on our Republican line. Dwight, you there?
Yes, indeed. Well, my comment on this would be is a question of fairness. I mean, they're cutting health care, which is very important, and Social Security, which is very important. I'm on Social Security because I'm disabled. That's a fixed income for me. Everything keeps going up. They claim there's no cost of living, but that's a crock. I think if they're going to be any fairness in all of this cut program, you can't treat the military as a sacred cow. If they're going to make cuts, they should make cuts in the military equally and proportionally to everything else they're cutting, because that's the fair way to do it.
Jackson, Tennessee, next up, and this is Jerry on our independent line.
Yes, good evening. My personal opinion, before they do anything for to the citizens, especially the poor or the underprivileged in this country, is they ought to stop all the subsidies to any of the oil companies. They ought to stop all the subsidies for all the ethanol that's being going on. Any foreign aid that is being spent ought to be automatically stopped, especially any money to the UN, before they even think about doing anything to the American citizens, and then address all the illegal problems that we have in this country and the costs that are being affiliated with that before they start taking away my benefits from Social Security or Medicare of money, that I paid in all my life. And then when I get to that point and I need it, we just go by the rules that we're given when we're born, and we work with that. And when they constantly change, it makes it very difficult. And I appreciate the time. Thank you.
5 amendment votes on the House floor. This first one, Jeff Flake of Arizona. This is a 15-minute vote. 4 votes will follow. There'll be 2-minute votes, including one amendment by Representative Pompeo, which would reduce the amount spent by the Defense Department on alternative energy programs. Last night, the House passed an extension of the Patriot Act, 3 Patriot Act provisions through December of this year. Well, just a short while ago, the Senate did the same, although their extension is a 3-month extension, just passing the Senate late this afternoon. We continue with calls, and this is Lance from Chicago on our Democrats line.
Thank you, C-SPAN. My first comment, I think the first cut should be made to congressional pay. I think that they should pay for their own health insurance, too. And I would like to see C-SPAN make public the full compensation package that congressmen and senators actually receive. I think Americans would be interested in hearing that. And thank you for my call.
Thanks for calling. Well, the fiscal year 2011 proposal by the Republicans here is it's a $1 trillion proposal for the remainder of the fiscal year. It doesn't deal specifically with congressional pay. It does deal with the legislative branch. It provides $4.4 billion for the legislative branch. That's 13% less than requested and $194 million less than provided in fiscal year 2010, according to the Appropriations Committee. This does not, however, deal with Senate spending, since the House is dealing with their legislation. That is dealt separately on the Senate side of things. We continue taking your calls and go next to Loma Linda, California. And Christoph, no, we go to Pennsylvania. Matt in Pennsylvania, waiting patiently. Thank you on our independent line. Hi there.
Hey, how you doing?
Fine, thanks.
Yes, I'd like to make a quick comment about the Tea Party candidates and what's going on with the spending and so on, and how these Tea Party candidates walked around and talked about the Constitution, and last night they didn't stand by the Constitution with the Patriot Act. And none of these Tea Party candidates, people, are going to make a difference. They're not making the right spending cuts. They don't have the audacity to make the right cuts. We need to make cuts in defense. We need to make cuts in Social Security, and we need to make cuts all over the place to get this budget under control. So the people's vote didn't count again. Thank you, man.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Thanks for your call. Indianapolis is next up. Bill on a Republican line. Welcome.
Yes. There's a couple of things on this particular bill which should be addressed.
Hey, Bill, do just a quick favor. Just mute your television there. You won't feed back on us, and go ahead with your comments. Bill, I'm going to put you on hold momentarily. Make sure you mute your television so you don't feed back, and we'll come back to you. Panama City, Florida is next. Pennsylvania, excuse me, we will go to, is this Panama City?
TV.
Hello, Indianapolis, Pennsylvania. Is this Matt?
Hello.
Go ahead with your comments.
Oh, hi. I'm calling from D.C., Washington, D.C. I wanted to say one thing. It's not fair to cut Social Security because we already paid into Social Security. And another issue is, am I on the air?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. And another issue I have is concerning, I think there's a lot of unnecessarily spending on people who are not citizens of the country, because a lot of them are getting disability insurance, and they have not paid into the system, especially their children. I work with a lot of children who are disabled, and their parents are not legally in this country. Also, a lot of excess spending is being spent on hiring interpreters and translators for the families of the children.
Is that being spent on a local budget, a local Washington, D.C., or is that a federal budget that's...
It's all throughout.
Yeah.
It's actually because actually I work in the school system, but it's spent at the state level, at the local level, and at the federal level, because we have a lot of federal programs which are run by the state, and you know, they have to have translators, interpreters, and actually a lot of federal grant money is spent on services that are provided to the parents who are not citizens of this country. You know, also I see a lot of that in the hospital setting. The hospitals, you know, you have to care for, if someone comes in the hospital who's sick, you have to provide services for them. And
that caller from the nation's capital talking about spending in the city of Washington. The federal fiscal 2011 spending bill looks for $79 million less, provides $79 million less than requested, includes provisions that bar the use of local and federal funds for abortions and needle exchange programs in the city of Washington. Before the debate got underway this afternoon, Speaker John Boehner laid out what was ahead, including the general debate ahead and the number of amendments, and noted the historic nature of this evening's debate. Here's what he had to say.
Speaker's recognized.
My colleagues, I think a lot of you know that I've always believed that the House works best when the House is allowed to work its will. I think all of you know that we're embarking on a more open process in this Congress, and it'll start today with a consideration of this continuing resolution. I take to the well to suggest to my members that we want all members to be able to participate in the debate here in the House. We also want to keep our commitment to the members to meet the schedule that we've outlined for everyone. That means as we go through the next couple of days, I'm going to ask members on both sides of the aisle to try to bring your amendments together, to try to respect the amount of time that's being taken, so that all members have an opportunity to be heard and to participate in the debate. We've never had an open process for a continuing resolution in our history, and so we're into some uncharted waters. I'm ready to expect whatever, but I do believe that this process is important for all members, and I want this week for so that as we get into the weeks and months ahead, we can show the American people that the House can work together, the House can work its will, and at the end of the day, I think the American people will be better served by our service. I yield back.
For today, the House got underway with debate early this afternoon, began amendment debate at about 3:30, and here a series of 5 amendment votes, starting with this first vote, 15-minute vote on the Flake Amendment, and 4 2-minute votes will follow. Let's get a couple of calls here before they wrap up this vote. Your thoughts on where the federal budget can be cut to Washington State, and Sterling on our Republican line. You there?
Yep, I'm here.
Go ahead.
First of all, I think it's ludicrous that they cut from things such as Social Security and welfare and things that provide for the people in our nation. But we need to cut from places like military spending, places where we can afford to take some loss, but not places that affect U.S. citizens directly.
Well, specifically on this bill, this doesn't deal with that non-discretion. The Social Security is not dealt with in this bill. Now, they are dealing with some military cuts, as evidenced in these amendment votes that you're seeing on the House floor. Next up is Newport, Virginia, and Thomas on our Democrats line.
Yes, I understand all the cuts that they're trying to do here, but it is totally absurd to me that today the Speaker of the House spoke about cutting education and cutting away from all that. And also today he was talking about cutting away people from federal jobs. And he said, who cares? Now, the thing that gets to me, that's the Speaker of the House speaking, who's a voted official, and I guess he's officially a Tea Party guy, I guess, and that he don't think about the unemployment rate, and then he's telling people whether or not they lose their job, whether or not they're a federal employee or not. Nobody deserves to lose their job right now. And
let's get one more call. Thanks for that call, Thomas. Want to, as the vote winds down, get another call here. Cindy, an independent in Syracuse. You're the last caller here. Cindy, go ahead with your thoughts.
Thank you. I think where we need to cut is sending money to foreign countries and keep the money here in our own country. We have people that are suffering. I'm sure you've heard of the 99ers. They have been without an income, without any unemployment benefits for months. I myself have been almost a year now with no benefits. We need to get some extensions out there and get unemployment benefits to these people while jobs are being created. And we rely right now on food stamps to survive. This is not something that should be cut, nor should HEAP to help us pay for our heat bills, those of us on the East Coast where it's freezing cold during the winter. We just spend too much money in foreign countries, and we have too many people here in our own country that are suffering and in desperate need, and we need to do something.
That'll about do it for phone calls. Thanks for all the calls as the House continues debate into the evening, and more amendments ahead either this evening or certainly into tomorrow. Again, they've just started with the Defense Department still ahead, agriculture, commerce, justice, science, energy and water, financial services, Homeland Security, Interior and Environment, Labor, HHS, the legislative branch, and more. Again, the overall bill, trillion-dollar bill in funds through the end of the budget year, the end of September, that's over $60 billion less than the previous year, 2010, and nearly $100 billion less than the President requested for fiscal year 2011. 4 more votes coming up, 2-minute votes on the House floor.
On this vote, the yeas are 207, the noes are 223. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 87, printed in Congressional Record, offered by the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Pompeo, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevail by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 87, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Pompeo of Kansas.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
Amendment 87, proposed by Congressman Pompeo of Kansas, would eliminate all funding for the Innovative Research Fund. 2-minute vote, and two more will follow this one. These are all amendments, proposed amendments to the fiscal year 2011 spending bill. The House will be debating for the next couple of days. The overall bill provides $1 trillion in general funds through this budget year. That's $60 billion less than the previous year and nearly $100 billion less than the President requested for fiscal year 2011. Now, the President proposed his fiscal year 2012 budget yesterday. He held a news conference today and talked about that. You'll see that later in our program schedule, and you'll also see it on the C-SPAN video library. And administration officials are up on Capitol Hill this week talking about the 2012 budget. They'll be back tomorrow. Defense Department budget will get review from the House Armed Services Committee. The Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Admiral Mike Mullen, and Secretary Gates will be before the committee tomorrow live at 10 a.m. Eastern. That'll be on C-SPAN 3. And lots of hearings tomorrow, too, online at cspan.org. On this vote, the yeas are 72, the noes are 358. The amendment is not agreed to.
The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 63, printed in the congressional record and offered by the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Gutierrez, on which further proceedings were postponed, on which the noes prevail by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 63, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Gutierrez of Illinois.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is again a 2-minute vote.
Republican Mike Pompeo's amendment is defeated, but another one of his gets a vote in just a moment. First, though, this one by Luis Gutierrez of Illinois. The Democrat proposed an amendment that would eliminate funding for the Osprey aircraft. 2-minute vote on the House floor. On debate on H.R. 1, this is fiscal year 2011 spending, and the administration today issued a statement of policy and their opposition to the bill. They write that the administration does not support deep cuts that will undermine our ability to out-educate, outbuild, and out-innovate the rest of the world. The bill proposes cuts that would sharply undermine core government functions and investments key to economic growth and job creation, and would reduce funding for the Department of Defense to a level that would leave the department without the resources and flexibility needed to meet vital military requirements. That's the statement of administration policy from the White House, came out earlier today.
On this vote, the yeas are 105, the noes are 326. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 86, printed in the congressional record and offered by the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Pompeo, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 86, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Pompeo of Kansas.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
More than 400 amendments had been offered to the fiscal year 2011 spending bill. Not all of them will get votes, but the first 4 did. Another amendment here by Congressman Pompeo of Kansas. This one would reduce the amount spent on alternative energy research and development in the Defense Department budget, but lots more ahead. Possible continued debate this evening and well into the rest of the week as well as the House continues debate on spending for this fiscal year.
Mr. Reyes. Mr. Reyes votes no. Mrs. McMorris-Rogers. Off aye on no for Mrs. McMorris-Rogers. Mr. Butterfield. Mr. Butterfield votes no.
On this vote, the yeas are 109, the noes are 320. The amendment is not agreed to. I think it's all right. Committee will be in order.